The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. I just have a couple of housekeeping items before we get started. The first is that this is actually one of a series of webinars. You can access a replay of our previous one at the link at the bottom of that slide. And if you're interested in seeing another great use case of HIPAA compliant apps, we have another webinar coming up on September 12th. So our agenda today, first we'll hear from Mark Porter and hearing about the application of patient-reported outcomes to real-world evidence metrics. Then we'll quickly hear from Jackal about Convey's HIPAA compliant backend as a service. And finally, we'll hear from Joe about Google Cloud Platform and how it can be applied to healthcare and life sciences. We are recording this, and we will send the recording out later this week. And then also, we really encourage you to ask questions during the webinar. There's a little question area in the GoToWebinar module, and we'll make sure to leave a bunch of time at the end for the questions. So with that, we'll hand it over to Mark.
All right, thank you. Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining. My name is Mark Porter. I'm the Managing Director at IO Media. As I'm sure most, if not all of you, have never heard of us. We're a company based in New York City with office in New Delhi for production. Our focus is upon data generation and communication in healthcare, and one of our primary areas of focus is the application of patient-reported outcomes to impact not only patients and healthcare professionals, but ultimately to extend information and ultimately benefit to industry as well. PRO is a broad topic, limited amount of time, so obviously we'll be glossing over things and for purpose of the audience, focused primarily in the United States. We do have application, obviously, ex-US as well. And where we think the application for patient-reported outcomes really is, I'm sure you all know, really healthcare assessment and reimbursement is in the midst of evolution, and frankly the support for that is lagging. By the end of 2016, it's anticipated that more than half of Medicare payments will have moved away from fee-for-service to pay for performance programs as far as Category 3 and 4 reimbursement. The number currently to date is somewhere, depending on the estimates, between 25 and 40% of private payer reimbursing on performance-based models. That is expected by the end of the decade to be 3/4. And ultimately what we've seen is the metrics in place and the data available to hospitals, physicians, as well as, frankly, industry, is suboptimal in the form of its traditional metrics of primary endpoints as far as symptom management and disease course management, as well as secondary and hospitalizations, comorbidities, compliance, persistency, etc. Very objective metrics and obviously valuable. However, there's a significant side of the story that's maybe not addressed as well, and that's PROs. Really, we feel it's an essential and perhaps underserved component of the market, given the way things have been moving. I think for close to a decade now, PROs have been considered truly valid inputs for clinical practice. Most surveys rank PROs as very important. You can see they're 80% to interventions as far as improving communications, with more than 50% of respondents stating it's improved diagnosis and ongoing treatment. Similarly, there's a number of studies out that show that patient and family engagement is a key component of a more comprehensive strategy and beneficial to overall improved outcomes. A whole host of reasons, won't go into it, but obviously the access to information available to patients and their caregivers now is immense with the internet. And ultimately, when good information is found and employed by patients and their caregivers, this can benefit the outcomes. Conversely, if you're listening to an anonymous blogger who's going off the word of his sister's dog walker's friend, ultimately the impact can have, there can be a negative impact that leads to inefficiency and some challenges for the healthcare professionals. Lastly, there is emerging evidence that frankly, when patients are engaged in their care and when the inputs are viable, outcomes tend to be improved and ultimately not at greater cost to the system. In fact, there's evidence that cost savings occur. And so ultimately this shared decision-making process is one that we think if managed appropriately and supported correctly can be beneficial to patients, healthcare professionals, and industry alike. And within industry, I'm including pharmaceuticals, payers, pharmacy, etc. So at IOmedia, given that shift, we've spent the last couple of years building and refining an electronic PRO system that is built off of your standard and widely accepted in clinical trial, phase 3 and 4, PRO surveys, and bringing those to the supercomputer that we're all walking around within our pocket nowadays. And so we deliver validated surveys and performance metrics to the phone via app on a weekly, sometimes bi-weekly schedule. There are multiple touch points within. The performance metrics, by the way, are engagements with the phone that will allow for physical, cognitive, and visual assessments. That's shot in and combined into the database and then provided in the form of dashboards, primarily to the patient and their healthcare professional teams for population comparison. The benefits that we feel are there and that are reported by our users are ultimately the HCP can take a look at aggregate data share and compare against the individual patient based on a variety of filters and from demographics to disease state continuum, treatment, etc., allowing for a more robust assessment of the patient's true outcomes in between the visits and beyond the panels and assessments done at visit. Likewise, the visit that the HCP and the patient has, and I've read stats that your average visit lasts from 7 to 10 minutes with a primary care, a little bit longer for specialists, but ultimately that's going off patient memory as the doctor or nurse reads the chart. The patient is reporting how they're doing. It's an incomplete look at the patient at best, and then a treatment decision, whether that's initiation, titration, product or service switch, etc., has to be made in a very rapid time frame and with incomplete information at best. And likewise, the patient is often going off an anonymous blogger or a friend or peer who may have a similar condition as far as making their assessments, or even worse, television commercials telling them you should be on this treatment with little background or understanding otherwise. And so patients comparing themselves to others like them, a twins methodology as you were, and seeing where they might be, it certainly doesn't solve the problem, as everybody's healthcare is different, but ultimately it provides a more empirical foundation from which to make decisions. And then lastly, from a standpoint of pharma and biotech, payers, pharmacy, etc., validated outcomes in user segment allow for data analytics that can help them to refine and create more efficient and more personalized solutions. It should eliminate waste and time inefficiency, and ultimately enable a more a valuable service orientation to their customers. To do this, and bear with me on this build here, you have requirements, we have requirements. First and foremost, of course, is here in the United States, HIPAA compliant. In Europe, it's the DPD and E-Privacy Act. But the short answer is that all this data has to be secure and blinded, while the individual patient will share their inputs with their doctor unblinded. All population data, obviously in aggregate as well as in subsegments, has to be secure and blinded for HIPAA compliance. From a back-end perspective, from authentication to secure communications, monitoring and scaling across the board. We understand the pressures that doctors, industry, and patients not only face but desire, and ultimately it's what led us to choosing Convey as a back-end partner. Ultimately, there are a number of different options. We could have developed our own. We have 150 developers and programmers in New Delhi. This is where Convey's specialty is, and ultimately our decision to move towards real experts in the arena who have a unique value offering is where we are. I believe Jiku will talk to you more about it, but the purpose of this is to show we understand the requirements you have, and that PRO in the pocket of a patient can be compliant and valuable. On the left is a short list of GutCheck, which is a publicly available app for irritable bowel disease. Both ulcerative colitis as well as Crohn's are covered within this, that Janssen Biotech had engaged IO-Media to develop as a value add to their customers, both healthcare professional and patient, as well as to partner with pharmacy and the payer groups. There you'll see there are a handful of primary captures. They're utilizing the NIH-validated PROMS surveys as well as a number of functions thereafter. There are some user features that I'll go through as well briefly. On the right is MSCharacterMap, which we're developing in conjunction with neurologists, specifically to enable them to take a look at a much more robust view of their patients' successes, failures, the treatment progression, etc., across cognitive, social, and physical metrics. With MSCareConnect, we're looking at approximately 20, a little more validated surveys, again, PROMIS, also MSQLI, and a few others, as well as, I think, 9 at this point performance metrics from timed walking tests to colorblindness, logic such as Tower Hanoi, physical function, and finger tap testing, etc. The ultimate benefit of this data is obviously, from a patient and HCP perspective, a much more robust view of how a patient is doing, both in isolation and certainly over time. But there's benefit, of course, to the pharmaceutical and biotech industry, as well as payers and pharmacists, that enable them to understand in a sub-segment basis how to most efficiently offer products and services to, if not the individual patient, at the very least, a more refined small grouping. Just a quick snapshot to show you what the MSCareConnect app will look like. As I said, we'll launch in the October timeframe. Obviously, robust demographics captured upon registration, including MS history and treatment. The physical and emotional symptoms, as well as cognitive and physical performance are captured. None of the performance metrics or the surveys would require more than a minute's worth of the patient's time. Typically, it's actually closer to 30 seconds. So after that roughly initial 5 minutes of registration and capture, which can be done over multiple visits if so chosen, again, once or twice per week within MS, you're looking at a 30-second to 1 minute engagement. And then, of course, dashboarding on demand and live time data for the healthcare professional team as well as for the patients. There are features such as helpful hints, disease management tips, nutrition, social sharing, calendar sync for medication reminders, to appointment management, to aligning and identifying stressful periods which may trigger a relapse or other issues for the patient over time, and wearable integration. The other benefit is that there is electronic health record integration for the HCPs, and thus nothing is requiring a change in behavior. Currently pull up the patient's record on the screen when they walk into the exam room, and we'll have a snapshot with 10 critical assessment items laid out in the picture format function across their different EHRs, enabling a fairly robust snapshot of the last 3, 6, 12 months, whenever it's been since the last visit. With GutCheck, again, a similar thing here, just in the middle where my mouse is, you'll see a bathroom finder, actually, which was based on a survey of over 100 patients. As we were developing this, we worked with roughly 100 gastroenterologists on what their needs were. Similarly, worked with roughly 100 patients, and one of them was a bathroom finder. So in addition to the PROs, the social sharing, the reminder items, etc., and of course the dashboarding, looking at yourself over time or in context of patients like you. Equally important, geofenced bathroom, describing locations, directions, and of course your user ratings, cleanliness, what type it is, bar, restaurant, etc. These are all things that ultimately are done as a patient benefit, but the important thing here is that it becomes a one-stop solution for patients that ultimately allow them to to utilize GutCheck as a hub of frequent activity, and thereby ensure we get a fair amount of compliance and thereby build the data up for benefit. This is August data, or I should say actually July data to date. If any of you have attended Digital Pharma East or West, you've seen this data out of J&J. Roughly 2,000 user sessions, 4 minutes per month, I should say, or per week, excuse me, 4 minutes per use on average, with a longitudinal engagement within the app in the surveys of approximately 50%. This compares quite favorably to health and fitness apps overall. That's beyond just specific disease state or ethical pharma category apps. That 5 minutes, that is people who are using workout routines, diet, exercise functions, even your Fitbits or Apple Health Kits. Ultimately, 4 minutes is quite good. I'm not sure why our team decided you needed to know about Vermont, but at the end of the day, our most engaged region here, maybe it's the cheese and the syrup, but everybody is engaged in Vermont for nearly 6 minutes, as you can see. More importantly, on a daily basis, we get approximately 3,000 tracker entries, weekly surveys. Across all surveys, we get about 875. Patients obviously enter in at different points when they download the app and engage in the program, so 875 is a very strong weekly use. And what we're seeing is now 56% conversion rate, up from 20% at launch, which is meaning that 56% of those who download the app are now regularly participating with their surveys. 1 second, as I'm trying to advance the slide. There we go. We do add, without any promotion whatsoever, really, other than word of mouth and the occasional mention at a potentially a convention or third-party event. We're adding roughly 28 new users per week. The bulk of that is patient referral to other patients. And as you can see there, really importantly, more than 3/4 of our users return over the last 30 days. And so it's important from a standpoint of PROs are great from a singular point, but the reality is that their true value is showing delta over time. And so this persistency is very encouraging, will allow gastroenterologists and patients with IBD to take better use of the population data. It allowed Janssen to continue to refine their products and service offerings for their customers over time. And lastly, some evolutionary opportunities. At the end of the day, PROs are not the solution to the evolving healthcare market, but we feel an important cog or component. The ultimate goal is personalized medicine and ensuring the greatest response to ensure for HCPs the highest reimbursement, for industry, perhaps advantageous tiering structure, for patients not having to change medications on a trial and error effect or approach. And so one, we're looking at incorporating our program. We're actively discussing with a number of pharma and CRO groups incorporating this into clinical research. In 2017, it's estimated that the clinical trial market will be a $32 billion industry into it itself. That $5.3 billion is strictly the 16% represented by PRO studies. Because investigator trials are not truly real world, but day-to-day we feel is more close approximation to, we think we can bring in electronic data capture programs have improved but not really met the promise of improved data entry, time efficiency as well as cost efficiency. We feel we can augment and integrate, especially through the EHR and the lab panel capture, considerably better and hopefully reduce the overarching cost to bringing product to market through trial so that that $5.3 billion market actually shrinks and ostensibly there is a trickle-down benefit of reduced costs over time of medications. Predictive response modeling we're quite excited about. We're working with a number of academic institutions to take retrospective cohort analyses in cancer and some cancer categories and neurology categories as well, and ultimately take the retrospective cohort analyses of large scale or big data, as it were, patient records, and tie them to the prospective data we're generating in not only IBD and MS, but frankly, we have another 10 categories that will be launched by middle of next year. And what this will allow us to do, and any patient and HCP to do, is to assess an individual based on a number of demographic and disease state fields and compare that patient against 1,000 or 500 or 10,000 patients just like that individual. Say these are the 3 to 5 most frequent treatment paths taken. Here are the real-world outcomes in efficacy, safety, tolerability, access, compliance, persistence, etc., such that the HCP and patient can make a truly informed shared decision on what may be the best approach for that patient. And obviously, there's efficiencies and benefits to industry as well on that. And then lastly, because we have such a large-scale capture with IBD, as you saw, thousands of patients, we will launch in October with our beta with 2,000 patients in the MSCharacterMap. We are similarly should hit 10,000 patients per category in our expanded component. There's a fair amount of market research opportunities for industry, from a clinical trial recruitment to product and support service considerations, etc., that will allow pharmaceuticals, pharmacy, and payers to better refine their product and service offerings to HCPs and patients, and ultimately, presumably, hopefully, offering kind of healthcare marketplace, the role we feel they play, and the foundation, frankly, for what we think will be ever more personalized medicine going forward. So I thank you for your time. Hopefully that made sense, and I welcome any questions as you may have them.
Thank you, Mark. This is Jackal, and I'm going to be speaking to you about basically what Kinvey does to meet the requirements and challenges of building out these applications that Mark just spoke to you about, and also talk to you about how we do that. Right? So basically, what we are providing is a HIPAA-compliant backend platform, and at the end of the day, we accelerate the development of these applications that Mark and others are building. Not only do we accelerate the development of these applications, but we also accelerate the delivery and the runtime of these applications, and ultimately, we secure all of these applications, and we secure it at design time, and I'm going to tell you how, and it's the least expensive part of the software development cycle to make sure everything is secure and compliant, rather than do it during the time you're operating it, or should an incident occur and you have to fix it. Those are way, way more expensive to do. So we'll start with the left side of this picture here. So the first thing is you have to build the mobile app. And in order to build the mobile app, what Kinvey does is provide you with a software development kit that, among other things, gives you the abstraction of the backend. So you as a mobile app developer do not have to worry about security. You don't have to worry about how to interface
to all of these back-end systems that give you things like electronic health records, all the analytics data that you may potentially want to bring into your app, how to integrate and talk to this bathroom finder that Mark spoke about. All of that backend is abstracted to you, and it's available to you in the development platform of your choice, whether that be native apps that you're building on iOS or Android, or using one of the hybrid frameworks, either JavaScript, Xamarin, etc. And each of these software development kits gives you offline capabilities, so your app works very well offline. As Mark talked about, blinding the data, we give you encryption of the data already built in, so you as a developer don't have to write that code. Most importantly, we give you what is called token security, so any of the authentication tokens are anonymized, not persisted on the device, so even if people are on untrusted devices, there is no risk of these tokens being tampered with or stolen and used for other purposes. And we provide you easy ways to do things like push notification, SMS, email, etc. And that's on the mobile app side. If you move over to the top of this picture here, Mark also spoke about having these dashboards available, whether it's for patients, for providers, for administrators. And these are typically web applications, responsive web applications built using JavaScript or the new JavaScript frameworks that are out there. And we have the same software development kit for building out these types of applications. And all of the communications that happen between these applications and the Kinway backend system, or between Kinway and any of the data sources or cloud services that are providing the electronic health record information, all of those communications are secured, and they are secured by design. As long as you're using the Kinway software development kit, all of the data on the wire is encrypted. We use, third-party signed certificates, so we avoid things like man-in-the-middle attacks, spoofing, etc. And the backend system itself, the Kinway cloud, addresses a lot of the requirements that Mark has laid out. For example, we do user authentication, and you can have user identity stored within Kinway. We have a HIPAA-compliant data or file store system to allow you to store any mobile-specific data within the Kinway cloud, and also any files related to your application. We have data sync capability, so you can move data between external data sources and Kinway and be able to sync with these external data sources. A lot of times when you're building these applications, you want to orchestrate data, meaning do things to the data that is, for example, coming from one of these external systems, be able to modify it in some ways so it's easily presentable in the mobile app, be able to filter this data. All of that data orchestration features are available within Kinway. A lot of these backend systems we have found are fairly slow, especially as it relates to mobile, where the user expectation is sub-second response. And a lot of these systems may take multiples of seconds, and so we have data acceleration features with caching, as well as integrations to all of these external systems for everything from electronic health records to authentication, and also the cloud services. For example, that bathroom finder is a cloud service that is easily integrated with Kinway, so you don't have to write any extra code to do this. And finally, once your app goes live, you want to be able to support your end users, the end users of your applications that are calling in with potential issues, problems. How do your supporting staff deal with handling these issues to be able to quickly troubleshoot, diagnose these problems? And we have an operational intelligence capability that allows you to quickly troubleshoot these issues and have great visibility into exactly what's happening within your application end to end, from the application on the left side or on the top all the way back to the data source. So that's what the platform provides, and accelerates development of your and delivery of your application. Besides what we do on the platform, Kinvey, this HIPAA compliant platform is available with Kinvey's Enterprise and Business Editions on Google Cloud, and you'll hear more about Google Cloud in this next presentation from Joe. Kinvey will sign a BAA with you, a Business Associate Agreement, which is required for you as a covered entity to ensure HIPAA compliance. So we'll sign a Business Associate Agreement with you, which in this shared responsibility model, it covers the responsibility that we have for the Kinvey services, the security of those services, and the underlying infrastructure, which in turn we have a Business Associate Agreement with the Google Cloud Platform to cover the infrastructure piece, which is the compute, storage, network, and all of the cloud services that Google provides to us to host our platform. And the reason we are able to do all of this is to give you this Business Associate Agreement is that we adhere to all aspects of the HIPAA security rule. And this means we have internal policies, procedures, processes to maintain, all of the technical, physical, administrative, organizational requirements and safeguards that are required. And we constantly audit, fulfilling all these policies and procedures and make sure that we are compliant. So there's a lot of work that, without us that you would have to do yourself to ensure that you're compliant with all of these, all of the requirements of the HIPAA security rule. So this is a big part of what we provide as well, in addition to the back end, is to assure you that we basically have you covered as far as all the back end services that and software that we are providing. So we have a lot of customers. This is just a sample of customers that are using our platform and building these HIPAA compliant solutions. A lot of these customers are working with Mark and IO Media to build out these applications. So this is simply a sample. So that's all I had here from the Kinvey side. I'm going to hand it off now to Joe so he can talk about the Google Cloud Platform and what they do. Over to you, Joe.
Great. Thank you very much. I'd like to first thank our two previous presenters, Mark and Jackal, for great conversations there. And thank Kinvey for hosting this conversation as well. I'm excited to be here talking about Google Cloud Platform, and in particular what our opportunities are in the healthcare space. So just to provide a little bit of context before diving into this, many of you are probably familiar that Google's long been a pioneer in the data analytics space, which has driven much of Google's existing success. We regularly publish our innovations in this space, and many of those have really gone on to become the foundations of the big data industry. For instance, we developed MapReduce internally, which has gone on, which we published on and went on to become Hadoop. We developed Dremel, a wide variety of other big data analytics tools. And then importantly, and I guess it was last December, we open sourced our machine learning platform and released that to the world, a tool called TensorFlow. So that way you can take advantage of the machine learning tools that we've built over time. Now what's exciting about the cloud platform is the Google Cloud Platform enables users to take advantage of the expertise that Google has built in solving search and advertising, and leverage that expertise with your to solve your own problems. For the past 17 or so years, Google has been building out what we think is the best cloud infrastructure out there to service our applications. And the Google Cloud Platform is made available to let you run your apps on the same secure, scalable, highly performant system that runs Google applications. And we do this so that you can focus on patients and not infrastructure. Now, this wouldn't be a conversation about healthcare or life science if I didn't spend a moment or two talking about security and compliance. Google's the first cloud vendor to receive FISMA certification. We're the first to encrypt all of our data at rest. We have a wide variety of cloud certifications. We also encrypt all of our data in transit. We now provide customer encryption keys via customer-supplied encryption key offering. We support data locality, so if you need to keep your data restricted to the United States or to Europe or Asia Pacific, that can be done as well. And finally, we do sign business associates agreements so that you can bring your HIPAA-covered workflows to the cloud platform. One thing that's unique about our BAA is that it covers the entire service that you're running, and not just the infrastructure on which that service is running. So if the product of interest that's covered by the BAA is of interest to you, you're not limited to what specific instance type it's running. So for instance, if you were using a compute engine, you could use any of the available instance types in any regions. You could use preemptible VMs. You're not limited in that capacity. You're not limited to what data center you want to use it in. You're not limited by the scale, and there are no additional fees, charges, or commitments associated with signing a BAA. So I just want to talk a little bit about big data. The typical big data jobs involve a lot of work. Not only do you have to do the programming for the query, you have to provision the resources, you have to help it grow at scale, build out reliability, monitor, tune it. And what we're trying to provide at Google is a different model. We want you to focus on the insights and not the infrastructure. Be able to do this both in batch and in real time. At Google, on the Google Cloud Platform, we offer many of these tools that we talked about earlier as managed services. So Dataproc provides managed Hadoop and Spark clusters so that you can run them without having to do the infrastructure maintenance. We offer BigQuery, which is a managed version of Dremel, and that's a fully managed data warehouse for large-scale analytics. And Cloud Dataflow, which enables you to build real-time data pipelines that will process both batch and in real time or streaming data using the same code. And this can be programmed using the open source SDK from Apache Beam. Now, just want to quickly transition to talk about big data in life sciences as it really data analytics in life sciences. Google has particularly the genomics team had partnered with a number of organizations that are bringing really large data sets of patient information to the cloud. We work with the Department of Veterans Affairs and the Million Veterans Program pilot with Autism Speaks as they build out their missing database, as well as the Institute for Systems Biology as they're building out their cancer genomics cloud. What's unique about these is they're all situations in which there are very large volumes of data that need to be interrogated and that are being brought to the cloud really for the first time to enable that interrogation to happen. So BigQuery, as I mentioned before, is a powerful tool because it allows you to do real-time analysis of enormous data sets. It's got hooks into our genomics platform, so it allows you to easily query over variants. But what I'm showing you here is an example of a BigQuery query being run through our studio on the 1,000 genomes data set. And you can see, if you look at that highlighted area, that this looked at over a terabyte of data and queried over a terabyte of data and gave you an answer back in roughly 7 seconds. It allows an iterative type of analysis, so that way if you didn't like the answer or you want to explore a new pathway, it's very easy to go back and change the SQL code to generate a new question. Now, I want to jump back to a little bit to think about the Million Veterans Program. So this was work done with partners at the Department of Veterans Affairs and at Stanford University, where they're looking at the small sample of, they've got 400 genomes, but they want to scale up to, potentially 1 million. And one of the challenges is that when you're operating at that scale, you can't do quality control, quality assurance by hand. And so they were able to generate a number of queries in BigQuery that allow them to do these high-level QC pipelines to generate that information that they need in a robust, repeatable fashion. You can see that they were able to take the results and feed them into principal component analysis. They were able to look at concordance rates between whole genome sequencing and SNP arrays and map those out and see where differences might lie. And then finally, they were able to look at this. One of the challenges when you have these enormous data sets, it's actually kind of hard to make sure you don't have duplicates. So they're able to generate an identity by state map. And then finally, when you're looking at this, they looked at heterozygosity of the X chromosome and compared that with labeled gender, so they can reconcile both genotype with the phenotype. So that's just a quick tour of an example of some of the functionality that's available to you when you're operating on these large data sets in the cloud. We have capabilities for doing this on HIPAA-covered data. And with that, I'd like to turn it back to our organizers. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Joe. Appreciate it. We have some good questions, but I want to encourage everybody that's here to drop any in the questions box, and we'll be sure to get to them. So the first one I have is for Mark, which is, where do you see the use of predictive response modeling occurring first?
That's a good question. Where I see it first, I think in general the application will be in chronic and curable progressive disease states. Our focus is in breast cancer, prostate, and lymphomas, Hodgkin's and non. Additionally, in several neurologic or neurodegenerative disease states. I think given the robust data available from patient cases, the varying degrees of survival rates based on stage and intervention, and the numerous types of intervention from surgical to treatment and combination therein. I think you'll see it first in oncology, especially given both the taxing nature it places upon the patient and families in a treatment perspective, but also cost to the healthcare system of suboptimal or partial results or non-results. So I would imagine we might first see it in oncology. I know there's a number of groups working on that as well here and abroad, and so I think we'll see it probably in breast first, to be honest.
Thanks, Mark. Jackal, we have somebody asking about the difference between BAS and PAS. Do you want to elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So really apples and oranges in terms of backend as a service and platform as a service. At a high level, I can tell you what you're thinking about. When you're using a platform as a service, you're thinking about your code, how to develop your code, how to deploy it, and the underlying infrastructure, whether you're using dynos or Docker containers or virtual machines to deploy that code. So that's what you're thinking about. When you're using a backend as a service, you're thinking about pre-built services that are available to you that you're simply using. Let me give you a real example of this. So with the backend as a service, you get a built-in data store. So what you're thinking about is how to fetch data, save data, update data. Versus if you're using a PaaS and you want to use a data store, you're thinking about which data store am I going to use, how do I spin it up, deploy it, and then how do I write the code to fetch data, save data, etc. So really, it's about having the pre-built services and the monitoring, managing, scaling of the services, so you don't have to worry about any of that or spend any time thinking or working with that.
Great, thanks. For Joe, somebody here is wondering if there are any examples in drug safety or patient outcomes on Google Cloud Platform.
Drug safety or patient outcomes on Google Cloud Platform. You know, I don't know offhand, unfortunately. Nothing jumps to mind, but I would have to look, unfortunately.
All right. Well, thanks anyway. So as a follow-up, what is the scalability of the BigQuery platform?
Oh, so scalability. It scales wonderfully, and it's capable of handling terabytes, petabytes of data, and what's unique about it is that you only have to pay for the data that you actually query. So when you generate a query, or you pay for the data that the query processes. I'm sorry. Let me clarify that. So if your query only has to process a subset of the data, you don't have to pay for the giant data set. So it gives you a lot of power, and what's nice is that it's easy to join queries across multiple data tables and sets, and there are a lot of public sets available too for people to play with.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe. So we're running a little long, but I do have one final question for Mark, which is, what percentage of healthcare or pharma orgs are you seeing embrace these patient-reported outcome opportunities? And more specifically, what momentum are you seeing across the board to adhere or implement PRO?
So I think in real-world evidence or real-world outcome trials, the majority phase 4, some phase 3 is secondary endpoints. I'd say 100% of pharma has embraced PRO. In daily application as patient data generation for value add to their customers, both healthcare professional and patient, I'd say about 60% of pharma and biotech currently are looking to employ some form of a program. 100% of the category players in which we're developing have expressed interest in acquiring the data for purpose of informing their patient support efforts, HECOR, health economic and outcomes research plans, and life cycle management programs for the company as a whole. So I think the difference between those that are looking to acquire data versus develop their own support programs is, 50% of the market will do the latter, 100% the former.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time we have for today, so I just wanted to thank everybody for joining, and remember to sign up for the next installment in this series on September 12th.
Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.